Thanks, Sam, and welcome, everyone. We're going to be talking about today one of those examiner issues that has been coming up around the country over the last year or so, which is when the examiners come into your financial institution to do a compliance exam, they're asking for a new account script, meaning that you've laid out the conversation that's going to happen between the potential customer and your financial institution. And so today, what I thought we'd do is divide it into two parts. We'll talk about opening personal accounts first, and in the second half, we'll talk about opening business accounts and entity accounts, and really how to perhaps check off the regulatory things and the legal things that you have to accomplish in the new account script. But how would it sound? How would you ask the questions? How could you ask the questions in a somewhat consistent way and still get through your customer identification program, your due diligence issues, your job as a withholding agent, the signatory portion of the account agreement, and so forth. So there's a lot of tasks that are involved. And as we work towards this, one of the, thinking now is that we're kind of in this unfair, deceptive, abusive acts and practices that we want to make sure that what we present to the potential account holder is clear, that it's consistent, that there's no discrimination, that we don't force people into products that are not appropriate for them. And this is the environment that you and I, as folks that work in the financial industry, this is the environment that we're in today. We're way past the environment where you sell everybody a credit card or you sign everybody up for a debit card. And now we have to be more responsible, and not necessarily a bad thing, but we have to be more attentive to what that particular account holder might need and what makes sense for them, and also to fit them more appropriately and to be clear about our conversations about fees and pricing and so forth. So it's always that beginning thing, that welcome conversation, when a person comes into your lobby or into your desk and wants to open a new deposit relationship with you for the first time. And it's always that idea that we are going to stand up and greet them and look them in the eye and treat each person that comes into our organization with respect and attention that anybody deserves, that we begin a lifetime relationship with. Hopefully that's our goal. We want everybody to have the best customer experience, and we want that experience to be the beginning of a long relationship with our financial institution. So I remember back to my banking days, and one of the questions that we used to ask back then, and it certainly to me is a good question to ask today, is the first question is, what brought you to our financial institution today? Now, that strikes that purpose. Why are they there? How can we help them? Are they moving into the area, or are they just looking locally for a new financial institution? And in this process of asking this, what brought you to our financial institution today, we can accomplish two customer due diligence objectives, which is the purpose and the source. So where are they moving the money from? What are they hoping to accomplish today by coming into our institution? It can both help us direct the sales portion of our job, and it can help us direct the compliance portion of our job. So as we begin then, the purpose during the interview, just some little tips I would say to always put into your conversations would be things like, am I being clear about what I've said, or do you need more information? Because this idea of being tricked or lied to is something that we really have to make sure that our conversations, what we think might be crystal clear in our conversation, in our script with our customer, might not be crystal clear at all to the customer. So you might want to test out the scripts with some consumer groups to see how they feel about your script. But always asking for, do you need any more information? Have I been clear about these? And don't randomly sell products to customers. I remember it's kind of like going to McDonald's and them saying, and would you like an apple pie with that hamburger? We don't offer apple pies with hamburgers. We offer products that make sense to that particular account customer and their particular relationship. So it's not a blanket kind of sales opportunity. So you never want them to feel tricked or deceived or patronized or not have the information that he or she needs to begin using our products and services. What I would remind you is based on recent enforcement actions, the posture of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, it seems likely that financial institutions will need to ask at least two basic questions about every aspect of their products and services to manage their UDAP risk. The first question is, does the customer, and this is questions we're asking ourselves, not questions we're asking the customer, does the consumer have all the information that they need to make an informed choice about a product or service, and is the consumer in the right product or service? Because again, the Federal Trade Commission and Dodd-Frank have come in and said we're looking for things that are unfair, where the account holder has had substantial injury and the injury is not outweighed by the benefit and the injury couldn't be reasonably avoided. We're also trying to stay away from things that are deceptive. And the new one, of course, is abusive. Now, back to deceptive for a minute. Is it prominent? Is it presented properly? Is it placed close? Are the fees placed close to the product? And is there proximity? So those are the 4 Ps of deception. So keep that in mind. And I think sometimes I think about this and I think about these kind of legal terms like deceptive and unfair. You know, what would an 8-year-old think about it? But an 8-year-old would think, have they been tricked or lied to or deceived? They would know exactly what was fair and not fair. So we always kind of put it to the 8-year-old test, you know, how they would feel about it. It's not as fancy of language as abusive and deceptive and unfair. But again, we don't want anyone to purchase a product with our financial institution and then later feel tricked or deceived about that product, because they will respond now. And the consumer will go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and they will respond by complaining about your financial institution. And that's sort of, again, it's a different environment than we've been in. We were in this environment back in the 80s when Reg CC came out and Truth in Savings. And that was sort of when we introduced free checking and overdraft privilege. And so there was a consumer error going on then. And then our country kind of switched to this protectiveness, which we saw with CIP and CDD and OFAC. And, of course, that was in response to 9/11. And so now we're back again to these consumer thought processes. And honestly, I think most financial institutions do want to do the right thing, and they do want the consumer to understand the products and services that they're buying. I really find we're very ethical organizations. You know, our whole industry is fairly ethical, so we just have to be careful that inadvertently we don't deceive or trick the customer in any way. Now, so getting to the purpose and the source and the welcome and understanding our objectives here, then we know that we have to also work through our own customer identification programs and customer due diligence. And I'm going to talk more about due diligence in the second half, especially the new piece on beneficial ownership. But we know we can't open an account face-to-face with our account holder unless they have the ID that we're going to require as a financial institution. I was doing some training this week at a financial institution in Louisiana. We were doing some of their BSA training, and they're an institution that requires 2 forms of ID. Their ID has to be given before the account is open, not 10 days or 20 days or 30 days later. So once you greet that customer and ask what brought you to the financial institution today, then wonderful, you want to open an account, a checking account, a savings account. We can certainly help you with that. And we're going to need 2 forms of identification to get the process started. Because if you're an institution that needs 2 forms of ID and you need it before the account is open, we can't even begin opening this account without that documentation that we're required. If you're an institution that requires 1 form of ID, then again, we're talking today about face-to-face transactions. then we'll be talking about one form of identification to get the